what I was discovering, this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that I started to hear buzzwords like content marketing, branding. I started to hear these words over and over again. And I always, I don't want to say I had a knack for it, because I would try to do certain things for the production company, posting something up on Facebook in a certain way or a certain font that mimicked what our logo was, for example. But I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know that, oh, that's branding.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. I'm your host, Jody Krangle, and this podcast will discuss just how sound influences our behavior. I generally talk about this in the context of advertising and marketing, but there are other places this is important too. I really feel that it plays a much more important role in our lives than maybe we realize. So let's delve a little deeper. This is the first part of my interview with Corey Dissin. My next guest is going to pump you up. He's the undisputed heavyweight champion of content and host of the Go Get It podcast. He's a voice talent authority and social media influencer who has impacted over 100,000 unique voiceover projects over the last 25 years. He also mentors talent all over the country as a one-on-one marketing coach. I'm really excited to talk with him today. Please welcome Corey Dissin. You can find more information about him at corydissin.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Corey. I really appreciate it. I wanted to get some background here first because I know that you've produced audio and hired voice actors for your own production company for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what lessons did it teach you?
Oh my goodness, there's a lot to unpack there for sure.
I'm sure.
So maybe a little bit of how I got started. Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate in that I actually landed my gig with Paul Turner Productions, the former name of Propulsion Media Labs, while I was still a junior in college.
Wow.
And I happened to meet someone, a classmate that I had, and he was running the board on the All Request show at WYSP Radio, and I desperately wanted to be in radio. And I begged him, and just, say, hey, man, what can I do to get involved in that radio station? And he said, hey, you know what? I'll set you up with an interview with the program director, who happened to be a little guy named Tim Sabian. And Tim Sabian, for those who don't know, is Howard Stern's program director for decades. And he was the program director for Infinity Broadcasting in Philly, in New York. And I think he worked in D.C. as well. Anyway, here I am, a 19-year-old wet behind the ears kid, going in there literally with like the hat on backwards. And he gave me a sit down and offered me a sort of a volunteer gig to answer phones on the public request, the public affairs programming on Sunday mornings at 5 a.m. Oof, what a glamorous position that was.
Wow, 5 a.m. for a 19-year-old.
For a 19-year-old, and I was also working in the nightclub business, working at as a bouncer. So I would work till 3 a.m, go home, take a nap for an hour, and then go in and do this.
I was going to ask, when do you sleep? Yeah.
I still don't. But,
okay.
30 years later. But so I parlayed that position into an internship through the school, and I met Paul Turner, who was the production director. And, I wanted to be on the air. I said, man, I wanted to be Howard. I wanted to be a John DeBella, in the morning zoo. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. And shucks, 2 weeks into my internship, they fired the entire air staff.
Oh.
And that scared the heck out of me. And
Ouch.
I happen to be a big fan of stability. Mm-hmm. And I got a really terrible habit. I like to eat 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So
I get that.
When I saw the entire air staff of folks that I listened to in the morning and in the afternoon drive, etc., I saw them just being ushered out, basically. I said, what's the next best thing? What's a little safer? And that was production.
Ah, I get it. Okay.
And, and Paul and I happened to be, Paul was a young guy. Everybody thinks he was like 60 years old at the time. He was only 25. And he and I became pals, and we were baseball fans. So we played on the company softball team. And he would tell me, hey, come into my office when you're done all your envelope stuffing and T-shirt passing out, and come in and play in my office. And he would, allow me to sit in and watch him work and record voiceover sessions and produce commercials. And then at the end of the day, he'd say, kind of basically give me the keys to the studio and say, just go play.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah, that's what I said. And
Pretty good.
that's how I learned to produce audio. I mean, I learned how to run multi-track. We didn't even have digital workstations back then. That was still moving tape. And I learned all the basics, which I'm thankful I did, because I have a greater appreciation for the digital stuff, of course.
Sure, yeah.
And, to that volunteer time through my internship turned into a little part-time gig. They paid me like $5 an hour or something for a few hours a week just to kind of be his mascot. Mm-hmm. And then as I continued to learn how to produce more things, one day he walked in and he gave me a package of promos and sweepers for our little radio station in like central Pennsylvania. He said, hey, I want you to produce all these up and I'll pay you a couple $100. Well, I thought I hit the lottery.
Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me? Paul Turner's going to pay me to produce up liners and sweepers for a radio station? I was elated. It was amazing. And boy, it took me forever to get that done. But long story short, I started to get more of those little a la carte production gigs from him, and I got better at what I was doing. And then it got to the point where it's like, hey, Core, to justify keeping you around so I can afford to pay you, you're going to have to go out and find me some customers.
Ah, okay. Then it started.
So I had to literally dial for dollars, with a phone book and a phone with a cord on the end. Go figure.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah. And was, calling on radio stations, calling on, local businesses, whatever, ad agencies. And we built up enough of a book of business just by me messing up a lot and happened to stumble on some business that we wound up building a set of studios about 45 minutes away from the radio station where we were based normally. And that just kind of snowballed. We added an assistant. That guy learned how to produce. Then he needed an assistant, and so on and so forth. Paul Turner eventually decides, we're fast forwarding to about 2002, that he says, I really want to concentrate on my voiceover business. I don't want to be the owner of a big corporation and worry about overhead and benefits and salaries and all that stuff. I mean, it's a huge responsibility. Mm-hmm. So we had a common friend who actually had his roots at Infinity Broadcasting. Always used to joke and say, hey, Paul, you ever sell your business? I want to buy it. And Paul would say, oh yeah, sure, whatever, yeah. And sure enough, by 2003, he bought the business, and we changed the name to Propulsion Media Labs, added the video component, mm-hmm. and then things really just, you'd see that hockey stick, it just took off. And, here we are. I mean, I've been with the business now 27 plus years.
Wow. And
on a bad month, we're producing 600-700 commercials a month.
We'll talk about stability. I mean,
I'm telling
27 years, that's a pretty good run.
Put two kids through school. I'm very, very, very happy about that.
Yeah.
So, it's still kicking, every day. I mean, it's fun to kind of literally watch the register tape tick up with all the production orders that come in. We've developed a lot of really good relationships with some longtime customers that really rely on us as their sort of secret weapon, mm-hmm. because our unique selling position is that we work very, very quickly. And, we take on a lot of the jobs that some other production companies might sort of wrinkle their nose at.
Oh, okay.
Because they're little higher maintenance, turnkey type things. And we just do a lot of them. And we've developed a really cool business model where we work very, very fast. The analogy that I like to tell people is you think of your prototypical production studio with the big boards and the massive studios and the lights and all those kind of things. Imagine if that was a huge teaching hospital. Okay? Mm-hmm. So if that's what that is, Propulsion Media Labs is the ambulance.
Okay.
Okay? We'll keep your heart beating.
Yep.
We'll keep you alive, and we can do just about anything. We just don't, have this huge facility. I mean, we have a 2-floored facility, and I've got 7 full-time producers in there cranking out stuff. Mm-hmm. But so that's kind of the history lesson on how I got involved. And hey, thank you for the the little plug there I got to put in there for the production company as well. Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all.
What did I leave out?
Well, I am curious as to how you ended up working with voice talent more closely, and also how that fits into your videos. Do the people that you work with pay attention to the voice that they use, the music that they use, the sounds that go into their videos? I mean, how much of this do you have to pay attention to for them, and how much do they actually know about it?
So the genesis of your question was, of course, I was Paul Turner's right-hand man, helping him book his sessions. Literally back in the day, cutting his tape, tails out.
I remember reel to reel, so yeah.
Yeah, doing that, and then being his sort of client services representative. But and I would literally record him and produce his voice. And then, we decided early on that, hey, we're not going to really make money if you have to voice everything. Because speaking of sort of audio branding, not every commercial calls for the voice of God.
Yeah.
You need a variety. You need female talent. You need Spanish talent. You need young, old, everywhere in between. So that was part of my job in the sort of the sales process, was to go out and recruit talent. I didn't know where to look, so I started calling other production houses and say, who do you use?
Okay, yeah.
and they were either nice enough or dumb enough to tell me.
Okay.
And
it's a good
I
start.
started making relationships then. And then, at the height of the sort of talent recruitment, I'd like to think, and maybe I'm giving our company a little too much credit, there was a time where I thought there was a race for who had the most talent they represented online. Because I know Propulsion Media Labs and Paul Turner Productions, one of the first companies to start putting groups of voice talent on a website to book folks, not in a pay-to-play fashion, but like, hey, here's our roster, pick who you like. And then we just decided, geez, especially when all these other websites came out, that, you know what, let's lean that out to kind of like the 100 most reliable, most qualified in our estimation. So that's kind of how I got involved in the voiceover end of things. That was a really good differentiator from the other production companies that would often have to go to a talent agency.
Yeah.
Or would have to maybe have their own little group of, their own little bank of guys, their own little Rolodex full of talent that they might refer to. We got to say, we're kind of our own in-house talent pool. We'll handle all that for you.
Yeah.
Booking, payment, recording, everything. And then, like when Paul Turner left the company and sold it, then obviously he wasn't in the equation at all, and everything was every other talent. So I had the luxury of being able to not only manage a bi-coastal national promo voice and be involved every step of the way in his operation. I also got a chance to work with all types of talent all over the country, all over the globe, really. I mean, when you think of the UK, Latin America, and Australia, there was a long time we were working with some talent in Australia. So, I mean, this is all I've ever really done.
Yeah, sure.
I tell people, because, like I said, I started when I was 19 years old. There are people, that guy you can go to, boy, he's really good at fixing your brakes on your car.
Yeah.
And there's that other guy, boy, oh boy, he can really build a dining room table. He's a carpenter, great carpenter. Corey, you want to get something produced, a TV or radio commercial? Go talk to Corey and his gang. That's kind of all I've ever done to earn a living. So that being said, the voiceover and the audio component, because we set ourselves apart as, being able to feature these voice talent, we also used to be able to say, hey, every spot you get, even if it's a television commercial, is mastered in Pro Tools first. We're doing the audio mixing for it. We know how to do theater of the mind because we did a lot of radio.
Sure.
We have this excellent array of sound effects and a tremendous production library. If I can mention Killer Tracks, we use Killer Tracks. Those guys are like one of the industry standards. They're all over network stuff, and to be able to pick and choose what works in a spot, that's something that I used to do as a producer and kind of passed the baton and taught the next generation of producers to do, and so on and so forth. And I fired myself from the production room 10 years ago. And I haven't produced a spot hands-on since, but I've heard many in quality control, and say, hey, adjust the level here. His read is off there. The emphasis is wrong on that type of stuff. And, it's hugely important. Hugely, hugely, hugely important. The type of talent you pick, the quality of the read that you get, the performance, how you mix in the right music track. Is it overproduced? Are you trying to make it sound, like, I don't know, some sort of professional wrestling promo with all types of, bells and whistles? Or are you trying to be more subtle? Sometimes folks miss the boat with that. Even things with compression and reverb and all those types of things, that all affects the end product.
So how much does the client get involved in that? And how much do you end up doing just, yourselves?
So it varies by the client. Our clients know that they can literally just email us a script and say, I need this spot done. And then they get the spot done.
Sure.
Others are like, hey, make sure to use voice X from our pool. Others will be like, hey, we have a relationship with a talent. We sent you his voice that's attached to the email. Use that. Or make sure to use our jingle we had produced elsewhere, for example. And then they of course, have the liberty to sort of virtually be involved in the production process. We'll post up drafts of the commercial in Dropbox or whatever else. And if they want a music bed change, or if they thought that the talent missed the boat on the read, if they're not supervising the read themselves, we'll go take care of that as well. The client has liberties. They're not coming into the studio. We're not one of those studios where you come in and you shake hands and you get the cup of coffee and you meet everyone.
You have your lunch catered and
there's not all that pageantry. Now, we can do all that, and we have a handful of clients that are local that might come in that still do that, and we enjoy that, but we're much more turnkey when it comes to our process. It's like, hey, you can trust us to run this thing to the finish. And because of the technology anymore, with the internet, within seconds, they can hear or see where we're at, what progress we're making on a commercial, and give us feedback. We're used to that.
So from a casting director's point of view, which I'm assuming is kind of what you end up doing, in a roundabout way, maybe not as hands-on as you used to be, but still doing that kind of thing. How do you choose the right voice for a project? And I assume that the client has the final say on that.
Yes, they absolutely have the final say. We'll often provide them targeted suggestions. It helps that, as a company, we define some major verticals that, the types of customers that we routinely get. So, for example, automotive, furniture, casino, live event type stuff. That's kind of our bread and butter. So we know who, when someone says, hey, I want the guy that sounds like the movie trailer guy. Okay. We have our 4 or 5 that fit that sort of archetype. Hey, I want this needs to be in Spanish. Okay, we go to our Spanish talent. Or we get all the time, I want someone that sounds like James Earl Jones.
Okay.
So we have our mature African-American, deep voice male talent that we'll recommend. So we have sort of, I'll call them sort of pods or teams, that we can draw from. They go, oh yeah, we're going to, recommend them Jim, Jack, and Dave. Boom. And they pick the one they like best, and then we knock it out.
Yeah.
And we try to make sure, you ever been to a restaurant and you open up the menu and it's 20 pages long? What happens? You don't know what to order. So we don't want to give too many choices. We try to provide a variety, but not too much that it'll delay them making a decision. And if you remember what I told you earlier, because I got 599 spots waiting in the queue.
Yeah.
Chop.
Yeah.
We want to know what you want right away. Let's go. And a lot of our clients, quite frankly, they do the same types of commercials month after month. So they end up landing on their go-to voice or voices, which makes that whole process that much easier and that much more streamlined.
So, okay, I want to transition a little bit here because we were talking about the production company, but I know that you also do personal coaching with voice talent. So how did that come about?
Oh, my goodness. So, I have marketed the production company in every way possible because I've done it for so long. And we were joking earlier about using a phone with a cord,
Yeah.
for example, and using a phone book. This was before Google. There was no internet even. But between cold calling and emails and newsletters, events, going to Promax, for example, or ad club meetings, doing the in-person pitches where I'd show up with the monitor and the whole, dog and pony show, pay-per-click ads, SEO, every way you could think of, I marketed voiceover talent services and production services. Mm-hmm. And what I was discovering, this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that I started to hear buzzwords like content marketing, branding. I started to hear these words over and over again. And I always, I don't want to say I had a knack for it, because I would try to do certain things for the production company, posting something up on Facebook in a certain way or a certain font that mimicked what our logo was, for example. But I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know that, that's branding.
Yeah.
And, as I did a little more research, I said, you know what? I got to get out of my comfort zone. I got to do something different to draw not so much attention directly to the production company. I needed to draw attention to me. Not because I need the attention. Believe me, I'd rather be left alone. But I know, and what I teach and what I profess is people buy from people they know, like, and trust.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah.
And I had to put information out there to make that happen. So I did a little experiment. I put out my very first video. Was sitting at my desk, and I gave some, emailing tips or something for voiceover talent. And I said, let's see what happens. And wow, I'm getting like 2,000 views. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a second. I just got feedback from 2,000 people on one piece of content.
You hit on something there, yeah.
There's something there.
Clearly, you did, yeah.
And believe me, it was painful to see myself on video that first time. I still have that video. Oh, it's just horrible. But so I started to do that more often, and I started to learn more, and things started to evolve. I started to get messages. Hey, can you give me some advice on this? Mm-hmm. Because everyone saw the success of the production company and who I'd worked with and my track record, and I was able to speak about that. And I said, that sort of evolved. And I said, boy, there's a business here, and I saw that so many voice talent weren't doing it correctly. And they all had the same complaint. They weren't complaining they didn't know where to buy a microphone. Mm-hmm. They weren't complaining that I don't know how to produce a demo or where to get it done. Or who are the major agencies? I wasn't hearing those complaints. Everyone had the same complaint, is how do I get business? Mm-hmm. Well, I just told you 20 minutes ago, This is all I've ever done was get business. So I said, what can I do to share that knowledge? So that's kind of how that was born. And, I officially launched that, as a formal service 2 Septembers ago, September 2018.
Okay.
And, there's probably 50, 60 talent I've worked with since and continue to work with, and we're adding all the time. And, the social media, it's just ridiculous how that's grown. I mean,
of course, I'm sure.
The platforms themselves and my presence on there, I think when I started doing this little experiment, I might have had 2,000 connections that I just kind of amassed organically, and now that's over 90,000.
Wow.
So I get to talk to a big audience.
That's good.
Every day. And I figured out that, boy, if you amass this audience and you provide them with useful information and you prove that you're an authority, people will want to buy from you.
Go figure.
Yeah. It's a simple.
Wonder
so
how
all
that
I'm
works.
doing is I'm sharing my experience with voice talent, sharing what has been proven to work for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the talent that these folks have that I'm working with. I'm no voiceover guy. I'm just a guy who, kicked the VO talent in the rear end and said, get your job done now and for the price I want. So I've been able to, convey this information to other voice talent and watch them take it and run with it and add their own little flavor to it. And it's been very, very gratifying. And it's quite honestly, it's kind of turned into a little movement. I mean, I have my little gang, and they all know go get it. I mean, that's it's fun, and I enjoy it. I think my wife would rather I would spend a little less time with it, but I always have a mission. So this is a good opportunity for me to sort of pay it forward, create an additional revenue stream, and attract attention across the board.
So one more question about one of your sayings, because, go get it is definitely one of them, but you also say it's all in how you say it. So where does that come in? What do you mean by that?
So, I mean, I think you might be referring to, it is all in how you say it, but that refers to a few different things. And I'm thinking it's not what you do it with. Mm-hmm. It's what you do with it.
Okay.
Meaning there are so many voiceover talent that get wrapped up in, I have a Neumann U87. I use this high-end coach to coach me. I worked with this grade A producer. I had George Whittam, who's a superstar, design my studio.
Yeah, totally.
They had this laundry list of tools that they've accumulated, and those are no longer differentiators.
Well, I don't know that the client particularly can care about that.
That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting. But the problem is the talent think because these goodies are so special that that's worth mentioning to the world, that's why you should hire me.
It might be worth mentioning to other voice talent, but I don't know that anyone else is going to know or care.
And you get that pretty quickly, but you'd be surprised how many folks I have to kind of nudge to say, hey, that's not it. Those are kind of prerequisites. They're not differentiators. And that kind of applies with anything. You can't just go to the sporting goods store, buy a baseball bat, and then step onto a major league diamond and hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Just because you have the latest gear, you have to put in the time. You have to practice. You have to get your chops. And quite frankly, you got to put in the effort. I mean, the big thing is effort. And so many folks don't understand, and it's getting exponentially more important, in my humble opinion, that the skill that most voiceover talent, and let's just even voiceover folks, producers, graphic designers, freelancers, solopreneurs, the thing that they overlook the most, that they should be doing the most, is marketing.
Yeah. I mean, getting the clients is really, working with people is what you want to be doing.
That's what it boils down to. And, so many folks think that because social media is free, for example, it's a free way to market yourself, that, hey, if my logo looks cool and if I have a LinkedIn page, then I will now get business. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. You've got to work it. I mean, I'm a guy that, I have a nice little client base. I have, more than one company, more than one revenue stream. And today alone, it's 11:30 Eastern time on a Friday, and I've already posted 8 different social media posts just in one day.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not even done yet. And that doesn't even include everybody I've engaged with or shared or commented or, that device takes, repetition.
Oh, yeah.
And it's monotonous. And so many folks just give up. They give up. And I'm like, don't give up. Don't give up. You got to go get it. I did it again. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's why it's a saying of yours, right?
Yes.
It makes
sense.
sense.
It's an audio brand, as you would say.
There you go.
This has been part 1 of our interview. I hope you'll tune in next week for part 2. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, please take a moment to give the podcast a review. It's greatly appreciated and super helpful. Until next time.